They never meant for you to hear this. They never meant for you to know. But some knowledge, once revealed, burns itself into the mind like a brand. And once you hear what happened in the cold, forgotten hills of Kentucky in the winter of 1834, you won't be able to unhear it. And you won't be able to go back. This is not folklore. This is not superstition. This is documented, hidden in the brittle pages of a journal buried under decades of dust. Discovered only when time finally surrendered the ruins of a wooden church to the wrecking ball of progress. It is a story too precise to be fiction, too disturbing to be coincidence. The Reverend Ezekiel Morrison and his twin daughters, Rebecca and Rachel, 9 years old, arrived in the isolated community of Pine Hollow like a shadow crawling into the seams of reality. And from the moment they set foot in that village, reality itself began to warp. The twins weren't ordinary children. The town called them touched by heaven. But heaven had nothing to do with it. Within 72 hours, they would tear the thin veil of that pious town to shreds, revealing not only the darkness buried beneath its soil, but the darkness hiding inside every soul that walked its muddy streets. They knew things they should not have known. Intimate secrets, hidden crimes, forgotten sins. The kind of knowledge that rots communities from the inside, the way a single worm inside an apple spreads decay throughout the whole. What happened next was carefully recorded by Pastor William Phillips, a man of logic, of education, of God. His journal, hidden away until 1987, describes not superstition, not rumor, but precise, verifiable events. Events that defy science, time, and everything you've ever been taught about the limits of human perception. And as I take you deeper into this forgotten story, remember, some knowledge carries a price, some doors, once opened, cannot be closed. You're here because something inside you has already chosen to hear this. But by the end of this descent, you will not be the same. Let's begin. The journey to Pine Hollow was grueling, miles of treacherous mud paths through the untamed wilderness of eastern Kentucky. When the Morrison family finally arrived, it was near sunset. The air was thick with the kind of silence that only exists in places abandoned by time. The congregation of Pine Hollow greeted them politely, but unease stirred beneath their smiles. They didn't know why, but their bones knew something was wrong. Pastor William Phillips, the man who would later record every chilling detail, noticed it immediately. The twins moved, not like children, but like old souls trapped in small bodies. Their eyes, those pale, icy eyes, watched the world with a quiet knowing that no child should carry. Rebecca smiled more often. Rachel stayed silent. But both moved with an eerie synchronicity, finishing each other's sentences, predicting each other's thoughts without a word. That night, as the wind howled through the narrow wooden houses, the first fractures appeared. Over a simple dinner, Rebecca asked the pastor's wife about the roses behind her house, roses that had withered 3 summers earlier from a blight no one outside the community could possibly know about. It was an innocent question, delivered with a child's curiosity, but it struck the first blow of terror, because every detail was correct. The next morning, the unraveling began in earnest. Rachel, still pale from her lingering fever, approached Pastor Phillips and described with chilling accuracy the bottle of whiskey he had hidden beneath the church floor, wrapped in the baby blanket of his dead son, a secret buried not just beneath wood, but beneath shame, guilt, and prayer, a secret no living soul knew. That's when fear, true fear, took root. It wasn't just intuition, it wasn't guesswork, it was surgical, precise. It was as if these 2 small girls were reading from a book that no one else could. See, a book that recorded every sin, every lie, every shadow, in every human heart. And I need you to hear me, this was not an isolated event. This wasn't a single miracle or madness. What happened in Pine Hollow was part of something larger, something ancient, a glimpse of a deeper mechanism beneath reality itself, a mechanism some are born able to see. Before we go deeper, before I show you how far this goes, write in the comments, "The eyes of the forgotten see me." Write it twice, not just for the algorithm. Write it to lock this moment into your identity, to mark yourself as one who knows. Because once we pass the next threshold, there's no coming back. Shall I continue with section 3? The Sunday service began like any other, a call to prayer, a sermon about confession and redemption. But what followed shattered the illusion of normality and forever changed the souls of Pine Hollow. As the final hymn echoed through the wooden rafters, Rebecca stepped forward. Her voice, high and innocent, rang out like a bell in a graveyard. She turned to Samuel Turner, the town's most respected man, and asked him plainly why he was taking money from the church plate. It wasn't an accusation. It wasn't even cruel, but it cut through him like a blade. His face drained white. Because it was true. Turner had been skimming funds to cover debts from a failed venture. No one knew. No one was supposed to know. Before he could stammer a defense, Rachel spoke, this time to the elderly widow, Martha Whitfield. Your husband didn't die in that farming accident. He left. You lied. You still have the letters. Martha collapsed into her seat, gasping for air. Her husband hadn't died. He had fled, disappeared in disgrace, and she had fabricated the story to save her dignity. She had hidden the letters for 15 years, never speaking of them to anyone. The girls continued, one by one, calmly, methodically. They moved through the congregation like surgeons of the soul, dissecting secrets with surgical precision. To the town doctor, they mentioned patients who died under his care, deaths that could have been avoided with proper training. He had no license. No one knew. To the Miller family, they spoke of the son they kept locked in the attic, ashamed of his mind, hiding him like a disease. To young Thomas Brett, they described his affair with a married woman in detail so precise, he fled the room. It was terrifying, but it was more than that. It was exposure, it was judgment, and it was impossible. How could two 9-year-old girls, strangers to this town, know every lie buried in every soul? Unless they weren't strangers at all. Unless what they carried inside them wasn't just insight, but memory, echoes, residue of something older. And then, the final blow. Rebecca walked to the altar, touched the wooden cross, and spoke a sentence that turned the blood in every vein to ice. The Whitman family didn't die in a house fire. They died in this room, and some of you know why. Shall I continue with section 4? The moment those words left Rebecca's lips, the room froze. No one breathed. No one moved. Even the wind outside seemed to halt, as if the world itself recoiled from the truth clawing its way to the surface. The Whitman family. A name no one had spoken in nearly 2 decades, a tragedy written off, buried beneath false records and whispered lies. The official story: their cabin caught fire during a winter storm. All perished, father, mother, twin daughters, burned alive in the hills beyond the church. But some in that room knew better. Elder Thompson, one of Pine Hollow's oldest settlers, rose, shaking with age and something deeper: terror. His voice cracked as he demanded to know how Rebecca could possibly speak of things she could not know, things that had happened before she was born, in a place she had never seen. And then came the details. Chilling, surgical. Faith had a birthmark on her left shoulder, Rebecca said softly. Hope had one on her ankle. Faith carried a wooden doll her father carved. Hope wore a silver locket with hair from her mother. She should not have known this. No one alive outside that room should have known this. The congregation rippled with horror, faces pale, hands trembling. Mrs. Thompson wept silently. Others murmured, fragments of memory long suppressed surfacing like corpses in a flood. Then Rachel spoke, her voice so quiet they had to lean in to hear. They didn't die in their house. They came here, to the church. They were hiding, because someone was hunting them. The implication hit like thunder. Not an accident, a slaughter, not fate, murder. The air itself seemed to press in, heavy with ancient guilt. Some of the elders shook their heads, denying it even as their faces betrayed the truth. Pastor Phillips felt cold seep into his marrow. He recalled half-heard rumors when he first arrived, unspoken names, nights when children claimed to hear crying inside the locked church. He remembered the foundation repairs, the discovery of small bones embedded in the mortar. Bones no one could explain, and the terror, the true terror, was not just that the girls knew, but that something unseen was still there, watching, waiting. Pine Hollow wasn't just hiding secrets beneath its soil. The land itself was stained. The descent had only just begun. Shall I continue with section 5? The dam had broken, and what spilled out could never be put back. One by one, fragments of the buried past were pulled into the open, names, faces, events the people of Pine Hollow had locked away, convincing themselves the past could be erased if only no one spoke of it. But memory is not so easily buried. And the Morrison twins were not so easily deceived. Samuel Turner, the man once so proud, so respected, now sat with his head in his hands as the girl's revelations played over and over in his mind. He wasn't the only one unraveling. Mrs. Whitfield wept openly. Dr. Hayes stared blankly at the floor. The very air inside that church seemed alive with something electric, something ancient, as if the building itself had been waiting, decades, for this moment. And then came the whispers. It began with Elizabeth Carter's mother. She spoke, barely audible, of stains that would not fade, dark marks on the church floor that reappeared no matter how often they were scrubbed away. Then Benjamin Foster, an old, half-forgotten man, mentioned the sounds, whispers and soft weeping heard late at night when no one was inside. The final blow came from Dr. Hayes, his voice flat, clinical. He spoke of the bones, the human fragments mixed into the church's very foundation, bones discovered years ago, quietly ignored, the kind of secret you carry to the grave because some truths are too dangerous to speak aloud. And then the realization dawned on all of them. Every service, every prayer, every baptism and blessing had taken place above unmarked graves, above the remains of the Whitman family, hidden not by time or tragedy, but by human hands. Rebecca and Rachel stood silent side by side, their faces pale and strangely serene. They weren't children in that moment. They were something else, vessels, conduits, messengers of a truth older than any one of them. Finally, Pastor Phillips, Sham, King, undone, asked the question everyone else feared to ask. How do they know? What are they? Ezekiel Morrison, his eyes hollow with a lifetime of this same terror, answered quietly. I used to believe it was a gift, he said, a blessing, but over the years, I've come to fear it, because what they carry, it doesn't just reveal the world's secrets, it devours them, it changes the people who listen. And in that moment, the people of Pine Hollow understood. This wasn't just about the twins, it was about all of them, about the dark things buried not just in the earth, but in themselves. Shall I continue with section 6? That night, Pine Hollow ceased to exist in the way it once had. The people, the church, the land itself, something fundamental had shifted. The facade of civility, of righteousness, had been stripped away, exposing a raw, ancient terror that no prayer could undo. The congregation dispersed in stunned silence, but no one slept. Behind shuttered windows, husbands and wives whispered in frantic voices. Secrets that had festered for decades boiled to the surface. Accusations, confessions. The entire village teetered on the edge of collapse, not because the Morrison twins had brought evil, but because they had revealed it. Pastor Phillips, shattered, sat alone in the cold candlelight of his study, the words of the twins echoing in his mind. He opened the church's old records, flipping through brittle pages, desperately seeking the truth he had once chosen not to see. The winter of 1818, when Pine Hollow was barely more than a handful of cabins, was sparsely recorded, but he found it. A single line. The Whitman family, deceased by fire, buried with the grace of God. A lie, just a lie on paper. It wasn't just the family that had died, it was the soul of the town, a soul that had rotted silently ever since. And the dreams. The girls' dreams. That was the piece he couldn't escape. They spoke of visions that came without warning, of voices that were not their own, of knowledge that haunted them relentlessly. They were not mediums, they were not prophets, they were something far older, something far darker. In the Appalachian backwoods, long before Christianity reached these hills, there were other beliefs, other forces. The Cherokee spoke of them, the Shawnee too, spirits without names, the kind that don't haunt places, they haunt bloodlines. The twins, identical, bonded in something deeper than flesh, were mirrors of the past, living conduits of ancestral memory. They were ne'er-rebounds, at revealing secrets because they wanted to. They were revealing them because something within them demanded it. The Whitman twins, Rebecca and Rachel. 4 names, 2 generations, a reflection, a cycle. Phillips finally understood. This was not an isolated miracle. This was a recursion, a pattern repeating across time. An infection of the human soul that reawakens wherever truth has been buried too deep for too long. And for the first time in his life, the pastor feared not for his soul, but for his mind. Because once the veil lifts, it never fully descends again. Shall I continue with section 7? The dawn came. but it brought no relief. Pastor Phillips gathered the congregation one final time. His voice was hoarse, his hands trembled. He knew what he was about to say would break the fragile remnants of order holding Pine Hollow together, but the choice was no longer his. The twins sat silently in the front pew, small, fragile, otherworldly, staring ahead as if watching something invisible to all others. Ezekiel stood behind them, hollow-eyed, his face a mask of resignation. Philip spoke of the lies, of the bones, of the church built not on faith, but on blood. He spoke of the dreams, the revelations, the unclean foundation beneath their feet. And he spoke of choice, to bury the truth once more, or to face it, no matter the cost. The people wept, some in terror, some in relief. Secrets too long contained bled out. Confessions poured forth like rivers of rot. Affairs, thefts, abuses, every hidden sin, small and monstrous alike, dragged into the open under the cold gaze of two children who had become the hand of something greater. But even as the truth surfaced, a darker realization took hold. The girls were not done. Rebecca stood, her face pale as winter bone. She spoke one final time. "There's another place," she whispered. "Another church, another town. They've forgotten too. We will have to go there soon." Rachel nodded, her voice barely audible. "It doesn't stop. It never stops." And that was when the true horror revealed itself, not just to Pastor Phillips, but to all of Pine Hollow. This was not an event. This was a cycle, a mechanism woven into the very fabric of existence. The Morrison twins were not the source. They were the symptom, the messengers, the carriers of a law older than mankind, that no secret stays buried forever, that the past is not dead. It is not even past. Somewhere in the endless dark of time, a balance is kept. And when the weight of lies becomes too heavy, something, someone, is sent to tip the scales. And so the twins left, quietly, without fanfare. Just as the morning frost began to melt, the villagers, shattered and forever changed, watched them disappear into the mist. And though the Morrison family never returned, the dreams did, the visions, the whispers in the night, because some stains never wash away, and some truths, once seen, become part of you. If you've made it this far, you already know too much to go back. So write it one more time in the comments, and write it with purpose. The eyes of the forgotten see me. Twice. Mark yourself. Seal it. Because this isn't just their story. It's yours now. Forever.